Thank you for joining and welcome to another episode with Azim Sahir, a human capital specialist who has designed this podcast to inspire people to live meaningful lives and to pursue their passion. This is Season 8. In this podcast, Azim gives a laid back look at the important aspects of life and business through the lens of emotional intelligence. You will learn how emotional intelligence can influence your success in both personal and professional life. You will hear key life lessons and tips from prominent personalities, business leaders, entrepreneurs, EI practitioners, and executive coaches from all over the world. You can also watch the video version of this podcast on his YouTube channel. So sit back, relax with a cup of coffee, and let's get to the show. AI Cafe with Azim.
To be successful in today's tech world, you need to be trilingual. You have to speak code, client, and last part is important, colleague. In an era we are talking about artificial intelligence, we can have the best people and the right tools, the greatest environment, but it still takes certain kind of magic to get them to work together, deliver timely results, and build amazing relationship with our clients. So what is this magic the tech world in search of? Is it IQ? Is it AI? Or is it EQ? A very warm welcome to the show. This is season 8 of EI Cafe with Azim. I'm your host, Azim Sahir, a human capital specialist, a Lego Serious Play facilitator, ICF certified, PCC level coach, an emotional intelligence and emotional culture tech practitioner. Here we are again for another exciting episode, another 30 minutes of valuable learning. You heard the little bit of an introduction. We're going to talk tech, EQ, how it goes. So emotional intelligence in tech, how EQ become the new IQ. Right. To have this conversation, I do have a guest coming in. Let me introduce her. She supports change and growth in global leaders and their teams, drawing on over 25 years of multicultural experience as a leader in global technology industry and executive coaching and leadership development. She brings out the best in international leaders and leadership teams, supporting executives to effect positive change and thrive in the long term. Ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome Andrea Stone, founder, leadership coach at Stone Leadership. Tech, tech. Still on the tech. Right. So, Andrea, officially welcoming you to the cafe.
Thank you. It's lovely to be with you. Thank you.
So, thank you very much. My gratitude to you. Thank you very much for accepting my invitation and joining for a 30 minutes of valuable learning and spending your valuable time with me to share your experience and spread the message of EI or EQ, what we say. So little bit of introduction. As I mentioned, it really grabbed my eye on your title on your LinkedIn profile. So I thought of nice person to have. Let's get into it. So if you see my introduction, I thought about 3 C's like code, client, and colleagues. I think that's where tech world is now driving into programming, the code, Java, the languages, and end of the day, but it boils down to people working together and etc. etc. So that's what I want to know. How does the tech, because you have been coaching leaders from the tech industry. So I just want to pick your brain out of it. And so start off the question. I'm really curious to know, like, tech is important in tech. Why should tech leaders care about emotional intelligence?
Okay. So good question. Technology leaders are primarily focused on technology. But I think the key there, Azim, is the word leader. So obviously, when we enter an organization as a technologist, we have to show our technology smarts, right? So when we enter any organization, as a more junior employee, we'd be expected to perform and code, as you say. And as we advance through, in years of experience or exposure, we choose a path typically. Do we stay a technologist or do we become a people leader in technology? Now, as soon as you move into the area where people are involved, people are emotional and rational beings, and emotional intelligence is about blending both the thinking and feeling skills to make better decisions. So as soon as people come into the equation, you really will perform better if you are able to tune into how they're feeling, understand their perspective, motivate them, share a bigger picture and inspire them with a vision. The long and short of it is, as soon as people are in the equation, EQ counts more than IQ, I would say.
Yeah, I think here what I'm sensing from what you're saying is we are talking about tech, and today's trending word in Google search and everywhere is artificial intelligence. They're talking about Brad AI, ChatGPT, and it's surprising to see there are a lot of tools, and suddenly it's emerging on internet, on the web browser. Suddenly it's emerging, right? So we're talking in that particular trending environment about EQ, right? So what you're saying is so much of AI and IQ important in tech, but what you're saying is EQ is the bridge to bring all those things. Is it correct what I'm saying around?
Yeah, I mean, IQ gets you so far, right? It gets you a long way if you're just dealing with technology. So if you're a technologist and you're task oriented and you're delivering the technology that's required, fine. But now you've introduced other elements. You're talking about AI. So, there's lots of questions on AI, right? How will it develop? Who's in charge of AI? And you would have seen recent people leaving Google so that they can talk about the impact of AI. I forget the guy's name actually. So we need to understand what's the best thing for people in that situation. So people are using the technology. Now, are they going to continue using this technology? You specifically said AI, which is very difficult to talk about because we don't know what's going to happen there. But some of the things that have been said is, I think the guy who left Google, and if you know his name, just remind me because I've just momentarily forgotten. I think it was him who said, has there ever been a case of less intelligent beings controlling something more intelligent? So that is a big question mark. And I think the other thing is, do people want this technology? So you could have a whole debate around that. You could go back to the Luddites, remember, uprising against machinery being introduced in the Industrial Revolution. Is this the same or is it different? It's our choice, and what's the choice that humans are going to make? And how are we going to use emotional intelligence to make those decisions? Because how are we going to blend our feeling and thinking skills to make the best decision for humanity? Because there's no doubt that humanity is going to be impacted by the use of AI.
I love the fact that you're saying will the less being will be controlled by the more being is something I really liked, and I'm really going to catch it up to that. I think now what the whole social media, the media is trying to create a competition among the human being and the artificial intelligence component. But I think we need to really understand the architecture behind artificial intelligence and human being. Correct, Andrew?
Yeah, and I'm very honestly, I don't. I am not. I coach leaders who work in technology. I've worked in technology-driven organizations for most of my corporate career. I am not a technologist myself. I was always in the marketing space. But technology is a tool that we choose how we use it, right? Humans choose how to use it. So how are we going to use technology for the good of humankind is the question. I don't know, and I think it's very difficult to, who's going to manage this? Is it going to be governments or organizations going to self-police? Because there's not been any discussion around how this is going to be managed. And I think that is something that's important and we need to surface. But I feel we're straying into territory that I'm not sure I can, add too much value on, except to take a step back and understand the repercussions of adopting AI rapidly and how it's going to change the landscape. And is it the best thing for people generally?
All right. So here's the question, coming into more human perspective now.
Yeah.
Right. You did mention that you've been working on the tech industry for some time and you've been dealing with the leaders from the tech industry. On that note, what are the most important element of emotional intelligence that tech leaders should practice?
Yeah. So, and again, I don't want to just, say blanket statement that all technology leaders are like this. And as you know, Azim, as a coach, the saying is we attract people who are like us. So I typically coach leaders who are less outspoken, who are really high performers, who deliver, who manage their teams really well. So if I were to say a thread where I see technology leaders could be even more effective, I think it's in the area of creating that inspiring vision. So thinking bigger, connecting, you said the word at the beginning, purpose, connecting purpose to what people are delivering. So talking about the purpose of why are we here? What are we doing? What are we looking to do? What's the impact of that? Why does what you're doing, team member, make a difference here? But I think that one of the big mistakes is that tech leaders often don't manage upwards very well. So the classic, my work speaks for itself, which it does to some extent, but it doesn't hurt to also talk about that to more senior leaders and to engage with more senior leaders as equals, to have meaningful discussions about where we go and what we want for our organization. So there are a couple of the areas where I'd say technology leaders could step up a notch.
So I'm getting it. So the question is leading is, I do understand. Not everybody is the same. There are leaders, like, for example, the CEO of Microsoft. He brings empathy into it, which is personal life itself is an experience. So we are not I'm not trying to point out every tech leaders need to adapt to it, but certain leaders need to really get into that particular storm because it's part of the last part, like being the whole colleagues perspective, human perspective, how to get the work thing done. And that's what we are trying to talk. On that note, Andrea, what would be, tech leaders, with your experience, what are the challenges they face in terms of practicing this emotional intelligence in the workplace?
So as soon as you said that, I was thinking back to a session I did with people in tech, and one person said, yeah, I don't have emotions. So that to me was really, really interesting. And, there's whole dimensions of emotional intelligence, your cultural upbringing, social norms. Maybe what he really meant was, I don't show my emotions. I've learned to control my emotions, but everyone has them. Pretty much everyone has emotions. So I think the challenge is, technology, we're delivering something. It's very task oriented. I'm writing my code. This is the objective. But, whilst you are doing that, you're also having to your point, interact with colleagues. So being too task oriented can diminish the quality of relationships. And that's just something that not just tech leaders, all leaders need to tune into. Am I too much on the task focus? Am I engaging people enough? Am I talking about where we're going? And not just that, I mean, there's tech leaders who are very empathetic and very in tune with their people and their colleagues. But in which moment do they flip to being really task oriented and, kind of cracking the whip and getting things, pushing to get things done? So that's one question I'd ask. Do people see themselves as really task oriented, and what are they missing out on in terms of the people side? Or vice versa, if you're very people oriented, we also need to think about, what am I here to deliver, and rationally, how are we going to do that? So balancing, EQ is a blend of thinking and feeling skills. When you were talking earlier as well, Azim, the biggest challenges in practicing EQ, so that's one, like that guy said, I don't have emotions. And when we're looking at code, it's not emotional, is it? I mean, we might get a bit emotional if it's not working out for us, but what am I feeling? Do I ever tune into what I'm feeling? And the irony is, like, tech leaders can do a lot of analysis. They're very comfortable with dealing with lots of data, but typically they'll overlook the data that's in their emotions. They won't take time to think, well, why am I feeling this? Why am I getting really annoyed in this situation? What's causing that? Is this a pattern of mine, or is this a one-off? What's really, like the famous word, triggering this? What's happened that's causing me to have this reaction? And do they manage to just pause and then just work through the data, or do they ignore it? Do they press it down? Well, actually, I've done some research recently on this, Azim, with 6 seconds. And at least in India, tech leaders are and other leaders too, but tech leaders are very strong on thinking through things, on knowing in this situation, the rational thing to do is X, Y, Z. But the tragedy is they don't manage the emotions that come along with that. So, for example, if I know that I need to speak up and disagree with my boss, because that's actually logically and rationally the right thing to do, am I able to deal with the emotional fallout that comes along with that? Oh, I'm worried. What will my boss think? Will they think less of me? What if he gets angry or she shouts at me? And so they don't necessarily take the action that they've identified they need to take, right? So the emotional intelligence goes so far, especially the logical, rational thinking about what needs to happen in this situation. But dealing with the emotions that come along with seeing that decision through is where a lot of leaders fall down.
And here's what I'm trying to pick, because I also recently worked with one of tech companies to build this culture framework. Every time when I hear like, our calendars are blocked, our calendar is full, we are busy, we have back-to-back meetings. So my question from them is, okay, you guys are so busy. I'm really appreciative. I mean, you have wonderful work. So you're doing a brilliant work. I mean, you have good business. When do you take breaks? when you show that stop sign? And some of them said, when we're at home also, 3 o'clock in the morning, also we're on calls. All right. Okay. So when are you going to break? So when are you going to have your own time, and you're going to have your me time to reflect and have normal conversation, not business conversation. So what you're trying to say also, that that pattern you mentioned about the word pattern, it really picked up. So when you're getting used to that, and they are getting alienated or into silo mentality.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really important point. So sometimes, I call this a busyness disease. And if I'm great at managing my team, sometimes I can be overly empathetic, right? I can dive in and think, well, I'll do this. I'm faster at it. I'm better at this. Let me do this. Another big mistake. It's very short term, but it's also very comfortable. I know how to do it. Let me do it. As opposed to, let me let go of that, let them take that on, let them, if necessary, fail so that they learn. And so I can free up my time. But absolutely, I recognize that in so many organizations. Oh, I've got to go. I've got a meeting that starts on the hour. So have you had any downtime? No, I've had 3 hours nonstop. How can you still be effective? So it's kind of that busyness disease. It's not productive, obviously, and this is another challenge, not just for tech leaders, but because of that kind of task orientation often.
I really agree on that.
Into that.
Yeah. I love the word task oriented because they've been working on, for example, project management, agile, scrum master. Those are things. I'm not a master of it. I don't know this, but I've learned it's to make things more focused, more productive, more efficient. But then again, still the busy bees are very busy in getting into it. So the amount of taking space is, I think, Andrea, what I see the whole tech leaders need to really adapt, because it's a VUCA world, right? It's very vulnerable. It's uncertain. So I think that's what it is. So brilliant. Thank you very much for putting on that your thought process. So here's the next one. What are the most important tips you would like to share for tech leaders who are listening here when building their EQ? What would be a couple of things with your experience?
Well, one, just building on what we were just talking about, Azim, just build in time, schedule time for reflection, schedule time for thinking bigger, not just thinking about the tasks that need to be delivered or the immediate deliverables that are on your project sheet, just for letting go and letting your brain switch off and switch on to things that are more future oriented, to allow time to ideate, even to read different or view different content that's not even related to their area, just so that they can start thinking vision, longer term, more strategic. I think that's one thing. So free up the time. I think, I'm not sure how familiar you are with different models. So, apologies for, but I'm quite strongly affiliated with an organization called 6 Seconds. So they have a model where, do you know yourself? Do you know what you're feeling? Do you know your patterns? Take time to just check in every now and again. What am I feeling? What have I been feeling so far today? What's the cause of, any spikes or any troughs? So that people start to recognize their patterns and can create programmed responses in a way. So when someone talks over me in a meeting, then I will say, hey, I haven't quite finished my point. So often, to my earlier point, tech leaders can be very thoughtful, very reflective, very, thinking. They're in the thinking brain a lot of the time. So prep to speak up. Prep, like I said earlier, ideate, prep to share your bigger picture. And, in terms of EQ tips, I think the really important one is prep to, I know I just said it, but it bears repeating, prep to speak up in situations where you feel uncomfortable speaking up. So in those big meetings, when senior leaders are there, prep to say something, prep to share something that's bigger picture and not very task oriented or business as usual oriented. I think also, and you mentioned it earlier, I think is the sense of purpose. Why do you do what you do? What is it about technology that excites you, that drives you? So be really curious there. Is it serving people more efficiently or faster or better? Or is it the innovation? Is it the excitement of new technology? What is it that really motivates you? So that you can tie that to your daily choices, right? But also understand that, if you're really excited about new technology, take a moment to, when you're getting super excited, to just check in. Why am I so excited? Rationally, what if we follow this? Do we have the money to invest in this new technology? How is it going to serve our customers? So just tune into that rational side of the brain as well, to make decisions. But I think the biggest one typically, I'm not saying with all leaders, is are you tuning into other people? Are you tuning in? Are you feeling what's going on with them? What do they need in this situation? So that I very honestly, I was reading recently about empathy is not standing in the shoes of another person. It's actually kind of blending into them, like merging into them, so they're almost part of you. So are you taking time to just wonder
Brilliant.
what's going
Brilliant.
on?
I love the word wonder, the last part of it,
Yeah.
to wonder, like, how does this person feeling is something also can really trigger it up. And I'm really curious. You mentioned two things. One, you talked about 6 seconds, the model, and you lastly talked about the purpose perspective. And I think we are coming almost to the end of our conversation. Just want to put this across. In the 6 second model, the purpose is very prominent, right? So
Yeah.
I don't know whether you have mentioned it already, but how is that important for practicing EQ as a technology leader?
That's really, so many models don't talk about purpose. So they'll talk about, do you know yourself? Do you know what you're feeling? Are you managing yourself? Are you knowing what's going on with other people? Are you building strong relationships? So that's typically EQ, many EQ models. Purpose is absolutely fundamental to me because that's about values, right? What do I value? What is driving me forward every day? I may never achieve it, but what's driving me forward? And values are very intrinsically tied to emotions, right? Because if my values are syncing with the values of the organization or my colleagues, I'm motivated to move forward, right? We all value fairness, we all value innovation, whatever it is that we value. If they're not, then I'm going to feel demotivated. Then I'm going to switch off. Then I'm not going to be giving my best, right? So purpose is linked to values. Values is linked to emotions and intrinsic motivation and self-propulsion forward. It's a kind of fundamental human question. Why am I here? And it's our choice, tuning into ourselves, what's important for us.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so for technology leaders, and indeed any leader, what is driving you forward? How do you want to leave an interaction better than before the interaction? So what are you going to do to change the world for the better?
So I totally agree with the values and the purpose perspective. But the best part, Andrea, when we go for a session, any organization, and you ask, what's your purpose? What's your value? Purpose. Can you describe that for me? Those are the question comes to their mind. Because here's the text. If they are not knowing their purpose and their value, I don't think they should be, they even know the organization value purpose. I think this where the human resource team and everybody do a lot of activities, engagement stuff to roll it out. But as you said, the matching part doesn't happen. So that's where like really stagnated, demotivated. And if you really see shifting of jobs also happens because they're not satisfied because they don't know what's the purpose. So thank you.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Sorry, just on that point, I think also people don't recognize that, I'm bored. Why am I bored? Well, my values aren't being lived here. And so they think, oh, well, I'm not trying hard enough. And they blame themselves without thinking, oh, you know what? I'm not being able to express myself or live my values. But you're absolutely right. I think there needs to be more reflection on this. And it brings to mind, I was just reading Salesforce, Mark Benioff, right? His book. And pretty much all of it is about values. Now, that is a tech organization, right? But pretty much everything is about values and why values are so important and how that helps us make the best decisions. Are we, or, delivering happiness from Tony Hsieh, all about values. The culture is values driven, right?
Agree. Brilliant. I think one more thing too. This is what I ask all my guests when they come on podcast. What would be one golden nugget you can give to our listeners? One tip that to practice this particular element, irrespective of the industry.
The tip is hit pause. So we're talking about EQ. Hit pause before you respond. You can feel yourself getting hot or tense, you're annoyed, or some intense emotion. Maybe fear. Oh, I don't want to take this step forward. Hit pause. What's going on here?
Brilliant. Brilliant.
And make the best decision for yourself, right?
Brilliant. So thank you very much, Andrea, for this sharing this thought process with us. It was a pleasure to have you on board for this particular episode. My key takeaway is connecting purpose and the values is something I'm going to take it out today. I hope our listeners got plenty of key takeaways. And of course, you can get connected to Andrea through her LinkedIn. And of course, she's sharing daily basis these days. I love and I take a moment to read what she shares. There are a lot of insights and she brings a lot of different context into it. So it's interesting. And of course, you can log on to www.stoneleadership.com for explore her wonderful work she does. I'm putting all the details on the podcast note. With that, Andrea, thank you very much once again for coming on board, spending your valuable time with me to inspire people to live a meaningful life with emotional intelligence.
Thanks, and pleasure, absolute pleasure. Thank you, Azim.
Thank you for tuning in to this podcast of EI Cafe with Azim. We sure do hope you enjoyed it, and if you have any questions, please do reach out. If you haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe to the show that is available on all major podcast platforms so you're notified when a new episode is posted. Please rate, review, and leave a comment and share it with your friends. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you're leaving with some great insights that can help you in your daily life. Follow Azim on social media and do write to us on topics and experts you'd like to hear from, and we will try to get them on board. Goodbye for now, until we meet again on another episode of EI Cafe with Azim.